All right, so I'm going to be doing a topic today that I think is pretty fun to argue about. I don't fully know where I reside. Maybe I'll say on the negative. But what I'm going to be talking about today is a take I've seen quite a bit, and I used to believe myself. I don't know how I feel now, which is um, there's different iterations of it, but the rough thing is if we didn't ever have religion, the world slash society, like in America, but also the world, would be a lot better place, objectively, all across the board. Some nuances, but whatever. That's kind of the take I've seen a decent bit of, with some disagreements, a lot of agreements. Depends on what you go, what section. So as always, I don't script these. I just kind of go off the dome. Let's get right into it. I think it's a really fun thought experiment for sure. One of the things I always struggle with is people always think things are isolated. So they'll say, if X didn't exist, like, how would this be? But they don't understand that X is connected to Y, Z, F, and G, right? And so other stuff happens. So, a great example of that is some core Buddhist beliefs of codependent, codependent co-rising, which is like everything's basically empty and vacant of its own existence, and it's entirely dependent on each other. There's a lot of other like stuff in their mythos about that, depending on the sect you go to, like Indra's web and stuff. But the belief that I'm trying to articulate is that there is no substance to any action. Everything arises codependently. Um, so, for example, you might say, "This is my item, property, my happiness," but it's really not. It's not saying it's not yours. It just doesn't really exist as a finite identity. We want to say, okay, for example, I was just doing some reading on this book. I haven't finished it, but it's a still forest pool, just a nice traditional forest tradition of Theravada Buddhism. Okay, well, I might say I like that book, but that book isn't like one thing. Great example is I could say, um, like I like this book, but it's paper, it's time, it's effort, it's writing, it's teaching, all put in one thing. That's pretty understandable. I think a basic concept like to understand, but it's like, this book, whatever is, all the ingredients that went into it. So trees, sunlight, minerals, nutrients. So I think a lot of people can grasp that pretty easy, myself included. Oh, but what they don't understand is the codependence of it in the sense of like it's not just cause effect, or cause. A great example is people think, well, what if X action hadn't happened? And then they think of only that effect. I'm doing this really badly, but bottom line with the codependent co-rising is, so I feel happiness because another action is happening. Um, right? Let's say someone says something nice to me, and I feel happiness. Well, that happiness doesn't exist without someone saying something nice to me. I might be thinking, well, that's cause and effect. They said something nice to you, but they might have only said something nice to me because I get happy, and it wouldn't exist. There's also the fact that someone else might have done that cycle too, and there's this big web of action. So what I mean by that is, let's say you don't like a certain Jesus, a certain theologian. I don't think I ever talked to enough people out loud to pronounce stuff. I just read books. I really gotta work on that. Theologian, I think it sounds right. And you say, I don't like this guy's work within this tradition, faith, or whatever, and then you think it'd be awesome if he wasn't here, or didn't exist, or something. But then you think of how different maybe, let's say, let's say this is like a hypothetical, and I'll get back to the main point, I promise. You think Genghis Khan was an awful person, which I'm not gonna argue. I don't think he was a good dude, right? He is the alleged 40 million kills. Okay, let's say you think I wish he wasn't there. What if someone worse had come to power, even eviler and rapier, right? I mean, same thing even goes with Hitler. Like, obviously, we all agree we don't want Hitler there, right? But if for a second thought experiment, what if he didn't come to power? More tensions grew, and maybe things in Germany got even worse. Maybe then they needed an even bigger scapegoat, and then they did the same thing to Jews, or maybe different people, but probably Jews, and it was at a much larger scale, right? Now, the reason I'm bringing that up is because back to the main topic. People think without religion, there was also no prosperous society. Now, again, as always, I want to make clear I'm agnostic, probably more atheistic. I actually have only tried recently on a journey to learn how to respect religion, try to learn about it, 'cause I think some of it's actually very interesting and tied to culture and other stuff in philosophy. So, the big argument is society would be better without religion. So, right off the logical standpoint, I think religion has done some objective goods for society. I've already mentioned this in some other videos, but like, I'm in Minnesota. There's a Mayo Clinic. It's where I work. That was all founded by nuns and Catholic stuff. They also do some great colleges, schools, educations, institutions that help fund a lot of stuff. There's also a lot of theologians who are very interested in science as a means to understand God better. Now, the argument can be made, back it up. Maybe someone would have been interested anyways. Maybe they would have been interested in a better way. Kind of using my own logic from earlier to almost hurt the idea of religion being helpful. Maybe someone, if X religion exists, someone would have been more interested and more focused in science. Who knows? But one thing I think about is when we're thinking about the framework of logic, people need something to fill certain holes and roles in their life. It's not weird. And so if let's say we don't have religion, let's say you go back to 500 BC or really back with some Mesopotamian people, and you don't give them any religion, even like pantheistic, whatever. Like the whole idea of religion is just raised. Everyone is automatically atheistic. Let's just say that's the argument. They might freak out. They might have existential crisis. They might start tweaking and killing each other. They might do all sorts of different things, right? And that's not known for a fact. I'm also not trying to say if you don't believe in God, you're like gonna turn evil. Again, I don't believe in God. I haven't done any of that. But I think it's worth noting that with science, a lot of people are interested in science initially for the sake of God or whatever their idea of God is. And I think without that motivator, people are stuck. One of the biggest things I'm going to mention, though, is my not first grade, Jesus Christ, freshman year history teacher said, he said, oh, sorry, I was out. Religion was basically a construct to get people to work hard and keep working because there's something to look forward to or motivate them or kind of control people. I remember at that time, I was like, dang, that's depressing. So I was dealing with some existential issues. It made me feel more cynical and nihilistic and stuff like that. But it's not, I don't really take that right now. But it is a great way of saying it. Whether you believe religion is harmful, you believe it's manipulative, you believe in it, you like it but in a certain way, or you believe in certain kinds, or you think it's whatever you think. An argument can be made. It can be helped to control, guide people, whatever word you want to use. And so I think a great example of that is if people didn't have that, who knows what other routes and paths they would have gone off of. And I think a lot of people say, well, I'm agnostic or atheist or whatever, and I'm just fine. And that's what I actually just said. Um, but we also have to remember that like this is modern day. This is how we feel right now as a society. Right now, I can feel fine not believing in God because I can kind of live how I want to live, do what I want to do, and I don't. I have a society to kind of be my almost my check, my ground. You know, not like I'm religious to society, but people have laws, other stuff, and they kind of the way you're raised build these values. And I don't need an external force uh, guiding me, really, right? But what people don't understand is that how do I word this? If religion entirely was randomly removed, like from history, like it just wasn't a concept that could even be a thing, other issues would have kind of come into play. I feel like I think religion can be very divisive for sure, actually 1,000%. But I think again, let's go back to like older civilizations. They maybe wouldn't fight over gods, but they'd fight over um, land and other stuff and other things they ethically and morally disagree on or whatever it is. And that's kind of my big one of my big things too is people just think religion's gone, everything's fixed. Um, I thought it was for the past two how religion can almost be a good way to kind of keep people in check. And a lot of people say if you need religion to behave, you're not really a good person in the first place. And I agree with that to an extent. But again, I've already made this analogy, but I'd rather someone have bad intentions or the wrong reasons but still do the right things versus have good intentions and do the wrong things. So there's that. But I think it's the biggest thing I think people need to understand is they think that if religion's gone, there's just this vacuum and everyone's gonna be like amazing and perfect and to develop these things. But not a lot of these people, not a lot, but some, especially had like religious intentions. Um, I think it does give people a good center and a good guide in life. And some people argue that you're weak or you're a sheep, and maybe that's true to an extent. Maybe there's just different type of people. Maybe there's followers and leaders. I don't know. But what I do think people need to realize is I think almost objectively, religion has caused a lot of harm. And I think there would be a lot of more stuff going on without it. But I think to just dismiss it is pretty ignorant. And I also think the thing I always start with when people talk about religion is they just bring umbrella term, and particularly they think of popular ones where I live in America. They think Christianity. They don't understand that there are these varied traditions with varied ideas to the point of using atheistic religions, which defy what religion is. They don't think religion. Oh, I think of Buddhism, and I think of the Theravada Mahayana schools of Buddhism, and I think of the Brahmanic traditions, Vedic traditions, Hindu traditions. I don't they don't think of the Jain traditions. They don't think of I'm gonna butcher this, but like the Mandichism, the older Iranian religion, the Yazdism. Yeah, I don't want to be racist and say it, but I literally so but you know what I mean. They don't think of the Baha'i or the Babs or you know what I mean. They don't think of all these other traditions, and obviously I can go on. I'm not gonna name every tradition. People, you can pull up a goddamn wiki, but people just think of this one thing as a shrine and they go, "Oh, it's bad." And the funniest thing is, I fully agree with them. If you look at certain Christians you see practicing today, in particular, they are going to normally be spewing hate and ignorance. And even within the Christian communities, there's absurd amounts of difference. And what I found in almost every religion I've studied, the more I get to know it, the more I have respect for it, and the more I have respect for the principles of it. People fall short, but so does everyone. So I think it's kind of like laws are awesome, right? But people fall short or misinterpret or abuse and stuff. So it's kind of similar thing with that. Um, to an extent, though, I think unfortunately, like everything, it's a mixed bag. I think without a doubt, we can all agree religion has held us back in certain ways, but I think it's also helped push through innovation, help donate charities, other stuff. And here's the thing: this is the bottom line. I objectively think it helps make people a better person a lot of the time. Now, again, people always argue, and I fully agree with this statement that if you're like, let's say, a piece of crap, and the only thing stopping you is God or some scripture, this, that's kind of weird. But if we have, let's say, 1,000 or a whole, let's say, 5% of people just worldwide are just, we'll use the example Christianity. Obviously, Christianity is a lot more, 5% of people worldwide, but we'll say this percent, okay? We'll say 5% of people worldwide don't do certain bad things or extra nice, think twice, whatever, like to being a good person or a God fearing whatever person. And because of that they work hard, they're kinder, they donate to charity, they're more mindful of a couple things. Maybe it doesn't completely change their life, they're still the same person core, but they do these things. Now, again, the idea that that's what takes them to do that is not ideal, but they're objectively being better people because of this thing. And so it's kind of, for me, it almost reminds me of like laws in a legal political sense versus like any sort of religious stuff. Laws basically shouldn't need to be in place. You shouldn't want to steal and hurt your neighbor. You shouldn't want to do any of these things. People do, and it's a good incentive not to. It's good other things. So again, for me, that's like arguing laws and incarceration of certain stuff is bad, and I think it's objectively has a lot of good and help, and it's a necessity. But I also think you think of incarceration laws. I think there's a lot of legal loopholes. I think the laws are not perfect or even close. I think there's a lot of abuse in prisons, and so I feel like I'm yapping all over the place. But my bottom line is, people argue, would the world be objectively better or more prosperous religion? I think that's a pretty easy no. I think there's improvements that would be made, and there's differences that'd be different. But again, people assume that when you change something, it's a vacuum. It wouldn't be like not a vacuum. It'd be the opposite, just that. When in reality, it would be a vacuum. You remove religion entirely, or depending on what you mean, maybe it's a certain religion, something else will fill it. It could have been created more chaos. It could have been, um, like best example. I don't know why I waited this long to do it. I pull my head on my butt. No religion. People get really into science. They want to figure out the world like there was when the Age of Enlightenment, just even modern day. Okay, they get different theories back then when there was one allowed to prove them. This person, Copernicus, thinks, oh, sun goes this way, or you know what I mean. This guy thinks, oh, it goes around the Earth. Everything rolls on the Earth. They start killing each other over it. You get Copernicus Nights or something. You know what I mean? They get like all these, and so people would be almost dedicate themselves to science like that because science is the truth in the way. The same way right now online, you see people saying praise Adam or Adam loves you or these are dorky stuff. And it's only dorky because I think they mean it to just mean demean other people. But bottom line is, I think there's always things that's gonna fill a spot. I also don't think in the other that defeatist mindset of, oh, there's always something, just give up. Like, no, but I think religion has a very deep place. I think it's very human. Well, it is human in its core, and I think it has a lot of value to society. I think when people consider it, misconstrue it, it gets dangerous. And I think people like blanket statements to make themselves feel good because it's easy to be hurt by religion and be like, I hate it across the board, all religions. And it's also easy to be born in it and not having bad experiences or be important to you to like be upset people who think differently. I think there needs to be a lot more dialogue and acceptance between interfaith and as well as like just agnostic, atheistic, and different personalities and beliefs of the world. I think we all need to understand we have some core beliefs that we're humans. There will always be divisions. There's also always gonna be the same way, the same thing said 300 different ways. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of the religions have a lot of the same exact stuff. Like the core rules are that's like every religion, like be kind, be this. So there's got to be stuff we can all agree on, right? But at the end of the day, all of it almost seems identical and very similar in some ways, and then some of it seems so vastly different. People fighting over nuances, but that's what humans do. So